I still remember the first time I saw her, not the way people say they remember someone, but the way you remember a sound that stays in your body long after it's gone. It was raining. Not heavy, just steady, the kind that makes the air smell like metal and soil. She stood outside the library steps, half sheltered under the awning, her coat damp at the edges. Her umbrella had broken, one of those cheap black ones that fold inside out in the wind, and she looked down at it, half annoyed, half resigned. I should have kept walking. I almost did. But something about the way she laughed quietly to herself, that soft, tired laugh people make when they've already had a long day, made me stop. Here, I said, offering mine. You can take it. She looked up. And for a second, I forgot how to stand properly. Her eyes weren't the kind that sparkled, they were the kind that saw. I could tell she was the kind of woman who'd already lived through more than she'd ever admit in words. I can't take your umbrella, she said. You'll get soaked. I don't mind, I lied. I minded a lot. But she smiled then, a small, crooked smile, and that was it. I was done for. We ended up walking together anyway, sharing the umbrella. The sidewalk was narrow, and we had to walk close. Too close. Her shoulder brushed mine every few steps. I could smell her perfume, not sweet, not floral, something quieter, like warm wood and paper. She asked my name. Her voice had a calmness to it, like she didn't need to fill the silence. Eli, I said. Eli, she repeated, as if trying it on. I'm Mara. Her name lingered between us, heavy and gentle at once. When we reached her building, she hesitated before unlocking the door. You're drenched, she said. You should come in for a moment. At least dry off. I told myself it wasn't anything, just kindness. But when she led me inside, the air shifted. The apartment was warm and dimly lit, books piled unevenly on a table, a half-finished glass of wine near the window. It smelled like rain and her shampoo. She handed me a towel, her fingers grazing mine. Just a brush, but my pulse jumped anyway. She noticed. I could tell. Thank you, I said. Her eyes met mine again. She didn't say you're welcome. She didn't need to. We stood there too long, both pretending to find something else to look at. The window. The dripping umbrella. Anything. Then she laughed again, that same quiet, self-conscious sound, and stepped back. You're going to catch a cold standing there. I nodded, but didn't move. My hands were still damp, gripping the towel like I didn't know what to do with it. There was something in the air, not romance, not yet. Just awareness. A fragile thing balancing between politeness and something that could become dangerous if either of us said the wrong word. She reached for the umbrella, to set it by the door, and her hand brushed mine again, this time slower, deliberate maybe, maybe not. Neither of us said anything. The clock ticked. The rain softened. And then, a knock on the door. Firm, unexpected. Her body went still. She glanced toward it, then back at me, a look that said don't move, or maybe this changes everything. Before she answered, she whispered, almost to herself, you shouldn't be here. But she didn't open the door yet, the knock faded, but neither of us moved for a few seconds. She finally opened the door, it was just a neighbor asking about a power flicker in the building. A short, polite exchange. Then silence again. When she turned back to me, her expression had shifted. Softer, but more distant. Like a curtain had been drawn. You should probably head home, she said, half smiling. Before it starts raining again. I nodded, but there was something in her voice. Not dismissal exactly, more like self-protection. Right, I said. Thank you for the towel. She almost laughed, but it came out as a breath instead. You're welcome, Eli. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. We saw each other again a week later, by accident. I was helping set up chairs for a community talk at the same library, and she walked in with a folder tucked under her arm. She was giving the talk, about literature and solitude. I didn't know that then. When she noticed me, something flickered in her eyes, surprise, maybe recognition, maybe the faint awareness of a secret that wasn't supposed to follow her here. After the talk, I stayed behind, pretending to pack things slower than I needed to. She lingered too. You came, she said quietly. Didn't know you'd be here. She smiled. I didn't either, until this morning. I wanted to ask about her, about what she did, if she lived alone, if she ever thought about that night again. But I didn't. The air between us had changed again, heavier now, threaded with the knowledge that something about this wasn't simple. Later, over coffee in the library's small cafe, she told me she used to teach English. I stopped when I got married, she said, stirring her drink even though she hadn't added anything. You're not married now? I asked before I could stop myself. Her hands stilled. No. I didn't push. She glanced out the window, her profile outlined by the dull afternoon light. People always assume it's easy to start over, she said. It isn't. You lose track of how to let someone close again. I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded, watching her fingers trace the rim of the cup. When we left, she adjusted her scarf, brushing against me, a casual movement that lasted a second too long. I felt the warmth of her skin through the thin fabric of my sleeve. She must have felt it too, because she paused mid-motion, eyes flicking up to mine. There was that silence again, the kind that pulls rather than pushes. You make it hard to keep my distance, she murmured, then quickly added, I mean, it's easy to talk to you. That's all. Her cheeks flushed before she looked away. I wanted to tell her I felt the same. That her voice stayed in my head when I tried to sleep. That I kept replaying the way her fingers brushed mine. But I didn't. Instead, I said something harmless, I like listening to you talk, and it landed heavier than either of us expected. For a moment, her breath caught. Just slightly. Then she smiled, almost sadly, and said, You shouldn't say things like that. She turned to leave, and as she passed, her hand brushed my shoulder, light, deliberate, enough to make the world go quiet for a heartbeat. She didn't look back. But she didn't hurry either. It started with a message I wasn't meant to see. She'd left her phone on the cafe table when she stepped away to take a call. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Daniel. A short text, dinner next week? I still think about us. By the time she came back, I'd looked away, pretending to study the window reflection. But she must have noticed something in my expression. Her eyes narrowed, then softened. Old friend, she said quietly. Right, I murmured. Silence settled. Coffee cooling, rain streaking the glass. She folded her hands around her cup, thumbs brushing the rim in slow circles. I'm not good at letting things go, she said after a while. People. Memories. I don't think that's a bad thing. It can be, she said. Especially when the past starts looking kinder than it really was. Her eyes met mine then, steady, searching, and for a second it felt like she was warning herself more than me. We left the cafe together. Outside, the sky had darkened, streetlights hummed in the mist. She offered me a ride because my bus was late. Inside her car, the air was warm, scented faintly of her perfume. The kind that didn't announce itself, just lingered close. She kept both hands on the wheel, shoulders tense. About earlier, I said. You don't have to explain. I wasn't going to. That made her glance at me, quick, almost a smile. The traffic light turned red. We stopped. In that stillness, her fingers loosened on the steering wheel. My hand rested on my knee, inches from hers. She didn't move away. A heartbeat. 2. Then her phone buzzed again, the same name flashing. She exhaled sharply, turned the screen face down, and whispered, I can't do this. Do what? She didn't answer. The light turned green. We moved forward, but the space between us felt tighter, charged. At her building, she parked without turning off the engine. "You shouldn't keep coming here," she said. "You keep letting me." That landed heavier than I intended. She looked at me then, really looked. Every line of her face softened and hardened at once. "I'm twice your age," she said. "People would think." "I don't care what people think." She shook her head, but her breath hitched. "You should." The silence that followed was unbearable. The sound of rain against the windshield filled it, steady and relentless. I reached for her hand, not grabbing, just letting my fingers rest near hers. She didn't pull away. Her gaze dropped to our hands, then lifted back to my face. Slowly, she leaned closer, enough for me to feel her breath against my cheek. Everything in me went still. Her lips parted, not in invitation, but in hesitation. The air between us trembled. Then a knock, sharp, sudden, on the driver's side window. A man with an umbrella, a neighbor, waving awkwardly, gesturing that she'd left her lights on. She rolled the window down halfway, thanked him, forced a smile. When she rolled it back up, she didn't look at me right away. Her voice came out low. "That was close." "Yeah." Neither of us moved to leave. The engine ticked as it cooled, rain streaking over glass, her hands still near mine, not touching now, but closer than before. This time, neither of us looked away. That it had been 2 days since the night in her car. 2 days of silence that hummed louder than any message could. When she finally texted, "I left your umbrella here. Stop by if you want it." I knew it wasn't about the umbrella. Her apartment was dim when she opened the door. A record played softly, some slow piano that made the air feel heavier. "You still keep this place quiet," I said. "It's easier to think that way," she replied, closing the door behind me. I handed her a folder of papers she'd asked about, some excuse I'd made to see her, and when she reached for it, our fingers brushed. That single touch felt like everything we'd both been pretending not to want. She moved to pour wine, the motion steady, practiced. I stood at the window, pretending to look out at the rain but watching her reflection instead, the slope of her shoulders, the slow rise and fall of her breath. When she handed me a glass, her hand lingered. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said softly. "Like what?" "Like you know me better than I do." I took a slow breath. "Maybe I do." Her eyes flicked up, sharp and uncertain. "You don't understand, Eli. This, whatever this is, can't mean what you think." "Then tell me what it means." She didn't. Instead, she set her glass down and turned away. The tension between us was unbearable now, silence thick enough to hear the pulse behind it. I stepped closer. "You said you can't let people close." "Why?" She shook her head. "Because I ruin things. I hurt people without meaning to." "You haven't hurt me." She turned then, eyes shining with something fierce, anger, fear, maybe both. "Not yet." The words hung there, trembling. I reached out, slowly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. My fingers brushed her skin, warm and trembling. She didn't move. "You don't have to be afraid of me," I whispered. "That's the problem," she said, voice breaking slightly. "I'm not." Her breath touched my jaw when she said it. Close enough that I could feel the heat of her words. For a moment, neither of us breathed. She leaned forward, almost imperceptibly, as if pulled by something she couldn't control. My hand found her arm, light, uncertain. Then, a sharp buzz. Her phone. Again. The same name lighting the screen, Daniel. She froze. The spell cracked. I stepped back, heart pounding. She stared at the phone, then at me. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "You don't know the whole story." "Then tell me." Her lips parted, trembling. "If I tell you, you'll see me differently." "I already do." For a second, it looked like she might cry, or laugh, or finally close the distance between us. But the phone buzzed again, louder this time. She turned away, gripping the counter for balance. "Please," she said, barely audible. "Just wait." And before I could answer, she walked into the next room, leaving the door half open, the record still spinning, and the question of what now? Hanging in the air like static. The music had stopped by the time she came back from the other room. The silence that replaced it was sharp enough to hurt. She stood by the doorway, phone in hand, eyes lowered. "That message," she said quietly, "wasn't what you think." I waited, pulse still loud in my ears. "It was my ex-husband," she continued. "He's been trying to fix what can't be fixed." The words should have calmed me. They didn't. "You didn't have to hide that." "I wasn't hiding," she said, almost too fast. Then she caught herself. "Maybe I was. I didn't want you to see me as someone waiting for him. You aren't." She looked up then, and the expression on her face was something between anger and relief. "A part of me still is. And that's the problem." She set the phone down, face down again, and moved past me toward the window. I could feel the heat from her body as she brushed by, that faint electric pull that hadn't gone away since the first night. "He left 2 years ago," she said. I told myself I was fine, that I didn't need anyone to notice me again. Then you show up, and suddenly she stopped. I stepped closer, slowly, until we both saw our reflections side by side in the glass, her shoulders drawn tight, my hand hovering near them but not quite touching. "What?" I asked. "I started waiting for your messages," she said. "That's what scares me." Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled slightly as they traced the window frame. Something in me gave way then. Not courage exactly, more like exhaustion from holding everything back. "I need to know this isn't just something you'll regret," I said. She turned around, eyes searching mine. "I don't know what I'll regret anymore." Her honesty hit harder than any confession. I could see it in the way her breath quickened, the way she tried to steady herself by crossing her arms, only to uncross them a second later, uncertain. "I shouldn't have let you in," she whispered. "But I can't undo it now." I took a half step closer. "Then don't." Her hand came up, as if to stop me, but stayed suspended between us, close enough that I could feel the warmth from her skin. For a heartbeat, it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Then came the twist I didn't expect. From the hallway, a voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Mara? You home?" She went pale. "That's my sister," she mouthed. "She has a key." A second later, the sound of the front door unlocking. Instinct took over. She grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the narrow hallway that led to the kitchen. My shoulder brushed hers, her pulse thudded against my arm. "Stay quiet," she breathed. We stood pressed against the wall as footsteps entered the apartment. Her sister called again, closer now. "You left your lights on." I thought. Mara leaned in, whisper close. "Don't move." Her breath touched my neck, her hand was still on my wrist, tight enough to feel her heartbeat against my skin. We waited, motionless, until the footsteps retreated. The door shut again. Only then did she exhale, shaky, relieved, but she didn't step back. Our eyes met, too close, too aware. "This can't keep happening," she whispered. "I think it already is." For a long time after her sister left, neither of us moved. The apartment was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the unsteady rhythm of our breathing. Mara still stood close, too close, her hand still resting where she'd pulled me. When she finally let go, her fingers brushed against mine, almost like she was checking to see if I was real. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice low. "That shouldn't have happened." "Which part?" She looked up, startled by how steady my voice was. "All of it. You didn't seem sorry a second ago." Her eyes closed for a moment, as if steadying herself. "That's exactly the problem." We moved back toward the living room. The storm outside had deepened, rain against the glass, the faint flash of distant lightning. She sank onto the edge of the couch, shoulders drawn in, fingers knotting together. I stayed standing, unsure if sitting beside her would make things better or worse. Eli, she said quietly, this isn't a fair story for either of us. I don't need it to be fair. Her gaze lifted to mine, sharp and soft at once. You'll look back and realize I was wrong for you. Then let me make that mistake. Something in her expression faltered, pride, maybe fear. She let out a short, shaky laugh. You don't even know what you're asking for. I took a step forward, closing the distance until I could see the tiny reflection of the lightning in her eyes. Then tell me. She looked at me for a long time before she spoke. I used to think desire was something you grew out of. Like a phase. But then someone younger walks into your life, and suddenly you remember you're still made of skin and need. Her words hung in the air, not an admission, not quite a surrender, but close enough to both. I sat beside her. Slowly. Deliberately. Our knees almost touched. Her breath hitched. If I don't stop this now, she whispered, I won't. Then don't. The space between us vanished for one suspended second, her hand finding my face, my fingers catching her wrist, both of us trembling. Not from fear, but from the weight of knowing this was a point we couldn't return from. The moment stretched, just inches between us, the air heavy with everything we hadn't said. Then she pulled back, abruptly. No, she breathed. Not like this. If we cross that line, it can't just be about wanting. It isn't. Her eyes searched mine, desperate for proof, or forgiveness, or both. She reached up again, but this time her hand rested against my chest, steadying herself. Then promise me one thing, she said. If I fall, you don't try to save me. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I could keep that promise. For the first time, she smiled, tired, unguarded, real. Good, she whispered. Then maybe we understand each other after all. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, the space between us felt like breath, fragile, shared, alive. And for once, neither of us stepped away. Morning came quietly, without apology. The storm had passed some time before dawn, leaving behind streets that glistened under a thin wash of pale sunlight. Mara stood by the window, wrapped in a loose sweater, her hair still a little messy from sleep and the night that had finally broken both of us open. I made coffee in her kitchen, careful not to make too much noise. The small domesticity of it, the smell of it, the sound of the spoon against the mug, felt impossibly intimate. When I turned, she was watching me. You're still here, she said softly, like she wasn't sure she believed it. I didn't want to leave before you woke up. Her lips curved, just slightly. That's dangerous. Makes it harder to pretend it didn't happen. I handed her a mug. I don't want to pretend. She took it, wrapping both hands around the warmth. For a long moment, we didn't say anything. The silence wasn't awkward this time, just full. I keep thinking about what you said, she murmured. That it isn't just about wanting. It never was. She looked down at her coffee, then back at me. You make me feel like I've still got a heartbeat. You do, I said, a little too quickly. That made her laugh, quiet, genuine. The sound filled the small kitchen, fragile but steady. I used to think people like us don't get second chances, she said. We just collect regrets and learn to live around them. And now? She set her mug down, reached for my hand. Her fingers were warm, sure. Now I think maybe we stop waiting for permission to be happy. We ended up sitting on the couch, shoulders touching. The sunlight reached across the floor in slow-moving lines. I could feel her pulse where our hands met, calm now. This won't be easy, she said. I'm not looking for easy. Her thumb brushed the back of my hand, a small, grounding gesture. You really are too young to know better. Maybe, I said, smiling. But maybe that's what you need. She tilted her head, studying me, the way people do when they realize they're no longer looking at a stranger. Then she leaned in, slow, careful, and rested her forehead against mine. No words. Just breath, shared space, the quiet understanding that sometimes, against reason and timing, people find each other anyway. The city outside was waking up. Somewhere, a door closed. A bus passed. And for the first time since I'd met her, she didn't look away. She whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe this is enough." I squeezed her hand gently. "It's more than enough." The record from last night started again, soft piano notes drifting through the room like memory. We sat there, not rushing to define anything, just letting the moment be what it was, real, imperfect, ours. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?